fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I got...
Sorry, Dr. Akbar, technical issues. We're all getting used to new technology.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks very much. Am I to introduce, just set the context as well?
Yeah, set the context. I've done the quick introduction of the panelists. So if you set the context, and then we will go to the panelists for their preamble.
So firstly, I would like to thank the panelists to have organized this, and also Mohammad Riaz Sachdina from Birmingham to have taken the initiative. And this has come about as some of the leaders of the Jamaat know that for the last 2 weeks, as Jamaat leaders and CoEJ, we've been coordinating together and meeting regularly how to prepare ourselves as Jamaat leaders and as communities for this challenging task that we've got in front of us, and which is going to get worse. And Alhamdulillah, I'm so pleased that all our Jamaat leadership are taking initiatives and have organized a local task force, especially in big Jamaats, and they are connecting with the vulnerable and those who are alone, and also planning for the onslaught that we will have in terms of supporting all community members, and various actions are being planned, and we are networking together within ourselves as a community and with other agencies as well. So really pleased that this initiative is going. If as a community member you have any difficulty, connect with your local Jamaat. They've all got, coming back to this is an initiative that looks at the economic aspects. And I'm so pleased that with our government, they've taken out this initiative, and we have got these volunteers who are willing to answer your questions, and hope that we benefit and others benefit. I understand that we have not been able to get it on YouTube, but I can see that it's being recorded, and maybe use this recording for further transmission to other people who may benefit. So over to you, Shabar. Thanks very much once again to all of you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Akbar. And this is the first time we have tried this. Obviously, there are technical glitches, and inshallah we'll get it right the next time around. Riza, over to you.
Okay, thank you. So as accountants, we've had a busy couple of weeks trying to support our clients during this time. Lots of change, lots of uncertainty. The government have obviously announced some very positive measures, which everybody has heard. So we know headline what they are. The problem is the detail is still very sketchy. So the how we claim the grants, the how we avail of the job retention scheme to claw back 80% of whatever figure it is for our employees, that is still very sketchy, very grey. It's not going to be rolled out yet properly for a number of weeks. So we've been fielding a lot of calls from clients to kind of put them at ease in terms of how that's going to happen. I guess the good news is that the facility is out there. A lot of it is automatic. So things like the reduction of rates for small businesses who are operating in the retail, leisure, hospitality sectors who've been forced to close down, that will be automatically applied to your rates bill dealt with by your local council. In terms of the tax measures, the VAT deferral is also automatic. So if you currently pay your VAT by direct debit, I suggest cancel your direct debit. You don't need to pay any VAT between now and sometime in June, and that will probably be extended as well. No interest will arise on any late payment either. The other item was the income tax relief, the income tax payment for those of you who pay by self-assessment in July. That's no longer required. So that will be deferred to January without any interest implications as well. I'm sure there's going to be questions on this. So rather than spending too long talking about it now, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Feel free to put them in the chat box and in the Q&A panel, sorry, and we'll answer them as we go along.
Thank you very much, Riza. Hasnain, your take, considering you had stores and suddenly you had to shut them down.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum everyone. Yeah, so we haven't actually shut down completely. We're still doing some emergency and essential work and things like that. But yeah, it's been a very strange couple of weeks. We've gone from being excited about the quarter end and thinking about how well we're doing towards our targets towards the quarter end, and then having to forget all of that and get into really deep crisis mode. We've taken a lot of different actions, a lot of different things we've done to sort of ensure essentially our survival through the next few months. And I think things are settling down a bit now. Everything's still evolving, but the rate at which things have evolved in the last couple of weeks is slowing down a little bit. And it's given me a bit more clarity over the steps that I've taken, what's worked, what hasn't, and the next steps for us as well. But by no means do I think I've got the perfect plan to get through this. I don't think anybody does, but certainly I can provide some perspective, some ideas about what can be done to help ensure survival through this time. That's definitely the mode we're in.
Thank you, Hasnain. Muntazir, you must be busy with your phone. We are grateful that you decided to switch it off for an hour so that you can talk to all of us. As a banker, what's your view? What's going on?
Yes, we've all been busy. Lots of phone calls with a lot of clients during these uncertain times, unprecedented. Nobody's has seen this before. But regarding the businesses, the banks are there to help. After you've explored all the other options that are available that the governments are putting the way Riza said, you can go to the banks, you can speak to the banks and see what they can do to help. Speak to your own business managers, to your banks, and put their cases, and they will look at the case-by-case basis to support your businesses. Government has announced some CBIL loans, which the facts are there online there, that they are giving up to 80% of the guarantee, and first year is interest-free. But what I suggest is you do your maths first. When you do need to borrow and gear up against your business, then try and look at what you need rather than what you want. It's not the time of want just now.
Thank you very much. I think that's an important message that we need to look at when you're looking at borrowing. We are looking at what is needed as opposed to how much can you get out of a bank, because ultimately it has to be paid back. Jawad, you must be snowed under.
Yes. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I appreciate this is a very difficult time for all businesses, whether they've got to scale back or scale up. I think the key message I wanted to get out today was it's about managing risk on both sides of the spectrum. For our business in particular, the emergency situation has resulted in some unprecedented conditions. I mean, there are things happening in the NHS, there are things happening in the pharmaceutical world where they're unheard of in terms of circumventing certain legislations. So being in a highly regulated environment, we have to ensure that we always remain on the right side of the law. And that's the key. Whatever you are doing right now, just remember, always remain on the right side of the law. If you have to circumvent any standard operating procedures, make sure you're having your conversations with the regulators. Even though the regulators are not working officially from their offices, they will be available, and make sure that you are talking to your regulators if you are in a sort of regulated environment. And it's key for all businesses to maintain your relationships both horizontally and vertically. So what I mean is with your suppliers as well as your customers, but also vertically is also with your peers in the industry you're with all of the support networks out there.
Thank you, Jawad. And just picking up on the point of vertical and talking to peers and people out there, one thing I have found that actually we are living through some very unprecedented times, and people who would generally not talk to you because they're your competitors are actually willing to talk and have a discussion as to what's going on, because at the end of the day, everybody's in the same boat. And I think it's about working together rather than in competition. And we've seen that in the healthcare, where we've been able to come together and actually influence some of the policies that the government has done for the betterment of our team and staffs. We've got a set of questions, but the first two are already in. Riza, you've been asked to repeat some of the points in relation to timelines.
Sure. Okay, can I just suggest, because of the technical glitches here, everyone is appearing as Shabar. So if you wouldn't mind, before your question, just put your name and a colon or a space, and then ask the question, so we can actually call you out when we answer the question. So the first question by Shabar is, do we have a timeline when we receive the SME grant of 10K? Now, the SME grant, I believe you must be referring to the rates. So those grants available to small businesses operating in retail, hospitality, and leisure. Now, anything to do with the grants is all automatic, is what we've been told so far. So those businesses that are eligible for the grants will be notified by the local council, and those grants will be processed. One thing I would suggest you do is, if you're unsure, call your local council, because they're the ones dealing with this. But also just to make sure that you are in the right category, because we've had some clients who are eligible for it, but because they were on a different category, they didn't fall within the right sector, they would not have had it automatically. So just that's one thing, just to check that if you are retail, just check that you do fall within the category, to ensure that when they do process the grants and the reductions to rates, that you qualify as well. So I hope that's answered that question.
Thank you, Riza. I think that deals with the other question that was there about the timeline for the SME grant for 10,000 is all being managed by the local council. Correct. Automatically, correct?
That's correct.
We've got loads of questions. So let us start with Muntazir in relation to what banks have got. So the CIBIL loans, business loans, what's available, what are the requirements? There is talk about, it taking weeks or no end. Tell us more about the CIBIL loans.
The CIBIL loan, the way they've announced it, that you get up to 80% of the loan is guaranteed by the government. So now every case will be looked at on its merits, case by case basis. So once you speak to your bank, they might ask you for your financials of last year. The reason is these loans are going to be paid back, if not in the first year, after that. So they will ask for the financials to see that you are showing profitability to be able to service the loans afterwards. What they're saying is you get first 12 months of interest free. So go speak to your bank, and there is option, but it's not just CIBIL only, because your business, every business is different. So you may not need that much money. There are different other options to look at. When you speak to your banks, they will offer you different solutions. It could be overdraft, it could be commercial credit card, it could be CIBIL loan, it could be normal business loan. There are different things. So every bank will give you the response or solutions that are available.
Thank you, Muntazir. So your view is CIBIL loans, talk to your bank, they will guarantee up to 80%.
The government is guaranteeing up to 80%.
The government guarantees 80%. You need to, they may ask you for your financials last year's. Does that mean they are looking for companies that are profitable, that were profitable before the crisis, or is it just so that you can service the loan should business be normal?
Well, it's on case basis, but they're not looking at only the profitable businesses. No, they are looking to support, all the banks will be looking to support all the businesses, because times are tough. So they will look at the financials, they'll see what the business is capable of, what it can deliver. And there are certain questions you've got to answer as well, that how are you running your business, what cash flow you have got, and how you'll manage after the crisis as well. And they will make the decision on that basis. But the other thing, if you have got a business and you've got a business loan, or you've got a commercial mortgage in place, go speak to your banks. They are offering 3 to 6 months of capital repayments holidays. That could save you on your cash flow as well.
So basically, we have to be creative with how we work with our cash flow during this period. Talking about cash flows, Jawad, how do you manage cash flows in this situation?
So I think the key, I mean, I think I'll dovetail with Hasnain on this, but the key for us is because we have seen an increase in the output on our end, is to make sure we don't overtrade. We're experiencing a very large amount of orders, but we've got to also balance our commitment to supply medicines at the right time to the people who are placing those orders. It's very, very easy to continue to supply and let the train run away. So what we've done is we've initiated very clear payment terms with our commissioners. Most of them are sort of NHS and government bodies. We have set up, so very typically sort of 7-day payment terms. They have a certain level that they can actually hit. But I mean, if you can imagine, our input costs have gone, have increased threefold. We've had to take on a fair few number of staff as well. So the key is we have to not end up in a situation where we are overtrading. That is as dangerous as having to shut overnight if you've got if you've had to sort of close overnight.
Hasnain, your view?
So obviously we had a different situation in that we didn't have an increase in sales. We were expecting sales to fall off a cliff. So the approach I took is, first of all, to take complete control over the cash. So we canceled all the direct debits and standing orders we had from the beginning, because we figured, yes, we can get in touch with people who were expecting payment, but if we can't get in touch by canceling direct debits and standing orders, we force them to get in touch with us, and then we can have that conversation with them. So that was the first thing we did, is cancel all direct debits and standing orders, give us complete control over what payments come in and out of the bank accounts. We also, before we had to shut down, when we were expecting that things were maybe heading that way, we talked to the staff, because payroll is by far our biggest expense. So we talked to them. We explained what we were expecting, the situation. At the time, there were a few raised eyebrows, because nobody really expected it to escalate to where we are today. We also reached out to landlords and lenders immediately. So with all our landlords, we said we want a 6-month break on our rent. And we said the same to all the lenders for any loan repayment. So I'm talking about business loans. I'm also talking about equipment finance and little bits like that. We did that with everything. And it's had mixed results. The other thing we did, by the way, also is we instructed all the managers in all the stores to call in all the debt. So before we had to shut down, we asked them to any collections. We do glasses, so any collections like that. It's also a really good time to write down any debt. So our instruction to the managers was, anybody who owes us any money, get it in, and any bad debt that you've been sitting on for a while, get rid of it, because it gives us a really clear picture of where our cash flow is going. But for the next step, once we'd done all of that, became all about forecasting and really figuring out how long we will last and what we can afford to do if our income dropped down to the level we were expecting it to drop down to. And so a lot of modeling, a lot of data, a lot of forecasting and projections to get to that point. I'd say if you haven't already, probably the most important thing you can do straight away is get in touch with all your landlords, your lenders, and furlough your staff if you're not using them. And that's a lot easier to do if you had the right sort of communication with everyone from the beginning, but it's not too late to do that. I'd say the biggest mistake would probably be trying to predict when things will be reopened and only looking at the next 6 or 8 weeks, because if this lasts longer than 3 months or 4 months, you need to know that you're going to survive that and how you're going to survive that, or even relying on the government to give you more because they've already given a lot up to this point. So yeah, that's what we've done so far.
Riza, I dovetail into furlough because Hasnain talked about as part of his shrink down, I suppose, temporary shrink down. There is this whole talk about furlough. People have had to open up a dictionaries to understand what it is and how it works. If you can enlighten people as to what it is, how it works, how do you go about doing it?
Okay, so this has been a very common question we've been hearing over the last week. And whilst I'm no employment lawyer, we've kind of had to cross over into understanding what it is and how to go about actually putting staff on furlough. So just by way of a bit of, kind of recap in terms of what the government have offered, they have offered 80% of wages. And the reason they've done that is because they don't want businesses to make their staff redundant. They need to keep the economy going. So what they've said is, they've said to businesses and employers, hold on to your staff. If they can't work, then we will give you 80% of their cost to you because we don't want you to lay them off. So furlough essentially is a change in employment status. You have to formally give notice to your staff and for them to agree that they're not going to be doing any work for you. And this doesn't apply to directors, so I've got a lot of those questions as well. So this is your genuinely staff who cannot do any work for you, who change their employment status, which is normally done by way of a notice and mutual agreement. And then once the HMRC portal is up and running, which is not expected to be live until probably early May at the earliest, then there will be a process where the government will reimburse you 80% of the cost up to the £2,500 limit. So your options are either you make them redundant or the government doesn't want you to do that. So you hold on to them. You can either cut their pay by 20%. So it's a process of a negotiation with your staff. You tell them, well, look, either I make you redundant because I have no business, I have no cash flow coming in for the next few months, I can't afford to keep you, or I give you a 20% pay cut and the 80% we will get to you when we get reimbursed by the government. So they can go home, do nothing, still get paid 80%, and you'll get that reimbursed. We don't know exactly the detail in terms of that 80%, including employers, national insurance, and all those kind of things. But for now, accept that 80% of the gross cost should be covered by the government. So in terms of the how steps, immediate steps are to actually give your staff notice that they're going on furlough, document that through a furlough notice. It's unlikely to be in their employment contracts. Get help from an employment lawyer if required to do so. And once you've done that, then from that day onwards, you can then process the application for the 80% as and when the portal goes live.
Riza, does that mean you have to cash flow fund it yourself as a business?
At present, yes, but there's no stopping you in terms of dialogue with your staff to say, look, guys, we just don't have the cash to payroll to pay you, and therefore you're going to have to, wait for your wages to come through, or you enter into a dialogue with them to say you give them half and give them the rest when the money does come through. So again, it's each case by case, whatever you can afford. But the most important thing is to maintain that dialogue with their employees, keep them informed, negotiate with them, and get their agreement for whatever you choose to do.
Thank you, Riza. So that deals with furlough in that sense. But whilst we've got staff going on furlough, other staff that you need to keep, this goes back to Jawad and Hasnain in relation to how do you maintain team morale and staff engagement during this difficult period?
So yeah, that's an interesting question. The way we handle the furlough thing, like Reza says, the details are so sketchy at the moment. It's very difficult to promise what you don't know you can afford, or to tell staff exactly what they can be expecting. But I think it comes back to sort of culture and how you operate generally as an employer. The way we handled it is we said to our staff that, look, this is the problem, we have no income. the government has given us this promise, and we had that negotiation with them. They were all completely fine with it, partly because, again, it's a situation which is so strange, so unprecedented. Nobody would expect anybody to have forecast this or predicted it at any point. So actually, in their minds, because we started the communication before the government's announcement, they were expecting a much worse scenario. And so 80% was actually a pleasant surprise for them. And then the other conversation with the staff was around how long it will be. This is the question that they always come up with. And again, that was just talking about, well, the government's promised this will be for 3 months. They've also promised they'll extend it as long as required, but we have no way of saying how long this will last for. And again, because of the nature of the situation, that's expected. But there is a bit of a moral obligation on us as employers as well, right? To make sure that the staff are looked after. And even though I'm not sure an employment lawyer would recommend this approach at all, the way we handled it was we asked staff individually about any particular hardships that they had. So we identified the staff in the company, and out of staff of 50, we only identified 2 who approached us and said, actually, a cut to 80% will make my life very difficult and I won't be able to put food on the table, or I'm looking after so-and-so person and I won't be able to do that. And so we topped up those and paid them in full so that they're not getting into those difficult situations. So that's how we approached it. And actually, it's gone down really well with the staff. I'd say in terms of morale, the number one thing I would recommend is communication. How staff react to this will largely depend on the culture you've implemented as an employer for a long time. It won't just be about what you did in the last 2 weeks. It will be about how you have been with them and how you intend to continue being with them. But having regular communication, keeping them updated, letting them know about your uncertainty and that you don't have all the answers, keeps people, keeps people on the same page as you. And I think also expressing gratitude where it's due. For those staff that do step up, making sure that you're appreciating that, recognizing that, not necessarily throwing money at it that you don't have, but at least acknowledging it.
Thank you, Hassan. I think that's an important call, and just a straight question, and you can or cannot answer. I'm assuming you have cash flow funded this and then hoping to recover it from the government for those who have been furloughed through.
Yeah, so what we did actually is we got in touch with the bank really early on when we saw this coming, before the government had announced the business interruption loan scheme. But because we were one of the first, they were really receptive. And the way I did it, which you can do under the business interruption scheme, is we did it through overdrafts, because there's no interest for 12 months, no setup fees. So we got ourselves a really decent overdraft, which if we don't have to use it, great, but at least it's there as a facility that we can use. Even though Muntazir says don't borrow unless you absolutely need to, I would, as a business owner, I have a slightly different approach to this. My approach is get what you can now while it's cheap and easy, and
You have to go pay it.
For survival, and that's why I did an overdraft, because I don't want to be in a situation where my loan repayments are so high and I dug myself into a hole, but I don't want to be in a situation where I can't pay my employees who I need then when we come out of this. So that's the route I chose, and everyone will have a different way of thinking about that. But that's how we expect to have to fund April payroll, for example, if the grant hasn't come back by then.
Thank you, Hassan. Riza, if you can look at the last 4 questions but I'm going to go to Jawad. In relation to, so interestingly, we've been asked a question, is this the best time to use an accountant? I'm not going to ask Riza that question. So if Riza can look at the redundancy and the furlough question, well, Jawad, is this the time to use accountants?
Well, I had an interesting conversation earlier with Hasnain about this. So we're in sort of compare and contrast scenarios. Because I am an accountant as well, I'm sort of biased towards accountants. So in a good way, that is. But for me, because we have to be quite careful into what and how we access the grants. So in my particular situation, I would say yes. In situations where you, at this time, you would need to limit what sort of costs you're incurring. You do need to take the right advice at the right time, and advice is never too expensive if you're getting the right advice. It always pays in the long run. So I think it's worth you doing your sort of groundwork first, having the right answer. I mean, having the right questions, and speaking to your accountant in a very focused manner to limit the time that he's spending on you to also manage your costs.
I think that's a way of saying use an accountant, but use them wisely, because they've got too many questions coming in to them. But I think the key issue is getting the right advice. And for me, that has been key for the work that we've had to do since this has come in, where the accountants have been really hot on saying, listen, are you sure you need this? Is this what is the plan? How are we going to do it? And collectively working with them. I think this is the time when true added value accountants come into their own. Riza, redundancy, June payments, if you've already paid up March, can you claim back because notice would have not been given?
Are you taking these from the Q&A panel?
Sure. Yeah, Q&A panel. Yeah.
Should I just work down them? Yeah.
Let's work down them and then let's see.
Okay. So there's a question from Sohail. For new startups with no previous accounts filed and no employees that have lost work, what access will we have to grants? I don't believe there are any grants just available for businesses just like that, unfortunately. They're being quite specific about covering things like fixed costs, like rates, and providing support through the cheap loan scheme for rent, providing support for employees' costs. There is no other grant option that I've seen so far.
Sorry, Riza, Muntazir, do you think somebody who has just set up a company with no filed accounts, bank might be able to do anything? Generally?
Thanks, Shabar. I had that question today from one of my customers on when I found out online there that, like I said, go and speak to the bank. They will look at the case. But if you've just set up the company, let's say a month ago, I would agree with Reza, you'll struggle. But if you've set up the company in the last year, traded for about 4 or 5 months, go speak to your bank, put down the management figures and forecasts in front of them. And on that basis, I would say either do it yourself, or you can go and speak to an accountant to go and get help for a forecast. And then speak to the bank. They are there to help. They are there to support you.
So there is some options available to them.
They are
completely dead.
Always they are, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Muntazir. Riza, best way in regard to obtaining grants and tax breaks to someone who operates a limited company, gets PAYE, but is a sole trader.
Yeah, no, I think I know where this question is going. There's a lot of director-only companies, essentially directors operating through their own company as consultants, as contractors, and they're wondering whether they would get the benefit that has been announced for employees. We have to understand that this 80% measure is only available to employees who put on furlough. So essentially, you cannot be working to claim this money back from the government, the 80%. Fundamentally, that can't really apply to a director. If you are the only person engaged in your company as the only director, then you clearly still need to be doing stuff to manage your company's affairs, to do your admin, to do what it takes to get more work in this environment. So as of now, there is no support available for directors of their own company who don't employ any of the staff. However, it has been mooted that in the announcements that we expect to hear for support for the self-employed, that there may include some provisions to also include directors of their own limited companies. So we'll just have to watch out for those.
Muntazir, Akhtar is saying, is it faster to set up an overdraft or a CIBIL?
Thank you, Shabar. I mean, overdraft, I heard what Hasnain said, and I agree with Hasnain for up to a certain bit that yes, there's overdraft, but overdraft will be limited amount. They're not going to give you an overdraft of 200 or 300,000 pounds. Whereas a CBIL loan, there is a cash flow. You put down your cash flow, what you need it, and the term is, it says on the website, up to 6 years, with the first year interest free. But application, I think, would take the same amount of time, same amount of information.
So whether it's an overdraft or a CBIL, broadly, you're looking at about the same amount of time.
Similar time, yes.
Similar time. All right. Riza, furlough, you've already paid up March. Obviously, notice was not given. Can you backdate?
Again, that's kind of a legal point in terms of you furlough when it becomes appropriate. So whatever date that was, and then when the system becomes live, then you can process those claims. Unfortunately, even the payroll software providers haven't been able to work fast enough to make the furlough process a reality for March payroll. So I think as long as you keep records and you keep those notices on file that when you actually furloughed staff, then there should be a facility to actually claim from the date you actually put that notice into employees for furlough.
So the key is the date of notice, right? So the day you told them you're furloughing them.
That's right. And my understanding is that whilst they're furloughed, they are still accruing holidays as well.
And they're classified as employees.
Correct.
They accrue holidays, doesn't change their contract.
Correct.
All their rights remain as they are.
That's right. Sorry, there was a point here that Zamir put in, which is a very valid point. Zamir is an employment lawyer. He did say that for the non-payment of salaries, it must be done by consultation and in writing, or it potentially could trigger potential tribunal claims, which is very valid, albeit these tribunals probably wouldn't happen for 18 months, by which time you probably would have had the cash in to pay those employees. But it's absolutely a valid point that, yes, you have to communicate in this process so employees know exactly what you are doing and get their signatures and agreement as well to whatever you are proposing to do.
So if you make them redundant, do you have to pay them the redundancy entitlement as normal?
I believe so. Yeah, if you make it, the furlough is an alternative to redundancy. So if you're going to make them redundant, fine. Furlough is an alternative to enable you to still keep them on. So when things do pick back up again, then there is a smoother transition.
So this is an interesting question. So if you followed staff, and then let's say June comes and things are still a little haywire, can you then convert from furlough to redundancy?
Again, this is probably a question for an employment lawyer to answer.
My thought would be possible because they would still be as employees, but I think you'd have to do the same notice period and stuff and tell them. And that period in which they were furloughed will also be classified as part of their employment for the calculation of the redundancy package.
Correct.
Also, just to mention, when we're talking about giving notice for furlough, my understanding is if you have contracts with employees who have layoff clauses and unpaid leave clauses in their contracts and you've used them before the Chancellor's announcement, then you can backdate the furlough to the date that you gave them those notices as well, as long as it's after the 1st of March. So that's my understanding of it.
But you'd have to give them some kind of notice to say, look, we are in a difficult situation.
Yeah.
I think this has been answered. Can a director who gets salary be furloughed? I think, Riza, you've answered it to say plainly no, broadly.
Yep.
If we furlough staff, can staff accrue their holidays? Yes, they do. So that's fine. Can you please answer the questions in the chats? Okay, we will try to get to those. If you give an employee an option of taking furlough scheme, is it worthwhile to take if any other repercussions on your employment in the future? I don't think we can, it's a little tough. We don't know what the future holds, but I don't think it changes any of your employment rights, is my understanding. Correct?
Yep, that's my understanding.
Right. Who's speaking of the landlord? Will the landlord stop 6 months rent, as the landlord will probably have mortgages stopped, or is the landlord just delaying rent for now and add unpaid rent forwards?
So I can talk from experience on this one. We have 9 different sites here, and we had really different responses from different landlords. We found the smaller landlords, so there were those who we bought the business from, but they just kept the business. They kept the property, They were really quick and really easy to deal with and said, yeah, no problem, we'll give you 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is you need. The problems we had were from the larger companies. One of our properties is owned by a Chinese billionaire who lives in China, who isn't having cash flow issues at the moment, I can tell you. But he had, he came back with, oh no, we can't do this and we can't do that. Or the property managers did. To be honest, and again, I'm not sure a lawyer would advise this, we said to our landlords, so the two companies that came back, they were both really large companies, both with a ton of cash. We said to them, we're going to prioritize employees. And so we've stopped the direct debits for now, and we'll pay you when we can, and good luck with the court action. That was our approach. It sort of worked. One of them came back and gave us 3 months holiday straight away. The other one hasn't responded. So I'll let you know if I'm not in jail in 6 months how that went.
I think the key is talk to your landlord and see what happens.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out that the government have announced that no one can make, there's that 3-month thing, so they can't, a landlord cannot force you out for 3 months whilst this is all going on. So it's kind of an automatic extension, as it were, but yes, you still need to liaise with landlords. And speaking from a landlord perspective, we've had many applications from tenants to say, look, sorry, trade is closed, we cannot pay, and you just have to be accommodating. But it's important to note, so there may be lots of landlords on this call, there is no support for landlords. So you just got to work with tenants, but guide your tenants. So tell the tenants to go and claim whatever they can, because the support is there for the tenants to continue paying the rent in order for the economy to keep going.
Riza,
to be clear, sorry, when it was personal and smaller landlords, we were talking to them and negotiating with them, and actually, we ended up, some of them said, look, we're not going to be able to do 6 months, we'll do 3 months, that's fine. Some of them said, we'll do half rent for 6 months, again, much better. The one thing I think a lot of businesses have done unilaterally, which I don't think is actually too out there, is to switch from paying quarterly to paying monthly, which I think a lot of landlords are very open to, and which is helpful for cash flow.
Riza, there's a saying, cancelling direct debits for HMRC, VAT payments for business, and mortgage payments for individual due to government holiday scheme. Any guidance? I think HMRC, you've already said that they should cancel the direct debits and talk to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, because you don't rely on HMRC systems, because they probably try and collect the VAT, even though they've said that everyone gets a free deferral. So I would suggest for VAT, do cancel it. For mortgages, that's a different matter entirely. That's probably one for Muntazir to answer, but from what I've heard, it's not advisable to just cancel your direct debit for your mortgage, because that might have a detrimental impact on your credit rating. So better to actually speak to your bank to formally get the payment holiday agreed with them before you do anything to your direct debit for your
Muntazir?
Yep, I totally agree. Thanks, Shabar. I totally agree with Reza. Don't just cancel your direct debits. Speak to your banks, get the formal approval for capital repayments holidays, so it doesn't affect your credit rating or anything, and it doesn't go against you. And from what I understand, all the banks are more than happy to accommodate. They are not like the landlords of China. They are helping the businesses.
Thank you, Muntazir. The next one says about the government has promised a package for self-employed. However, should self-employed in the meantime apply for UC, or should they hang on? I think the announcement is expected some stage today, isn't it, Teresa?
Yeah, that's what we've heard. So there should be an announcement coming by the Chancellor sometime today. So I'd say, yeah, hold out for that and see what's coming. It is expected to be something.
Whether the dividends will be included or not, let's wait. We'll see what the Chancellor has to say. There is some technical question.
Just going back to the cancelling of direct debits for the VAT, the other really important thing you can do if you're having cash flow issues is PAYE. So the government's extended the time to pay scheme, and actually calling them right now is quite easy. From the people I've been speaking to, it only takes about half an hour, and they're essentially saying yes to anything to deferring those PAYE payments. So again, it's a really good way of conserving.
So how long were you able to get a deferral? Normally it's 30 days, right? So or basically before the 19th of the following month. So How long have you been able to get a deferral loan?
To be honest, we haven't done it because we don't need to do it at this stage. But I think other businesses were talking about even asking for 3 months or something. But I'm not sure what people have managed to get.
Reza, Jawad, any experience on this?
Yeah, not specifically with PAYE. I mean, generally for VAT and things, they offer up to sort of 6 to 12 months. But there will be businesses out there whose corporation tax will be coming due, you know, this month, next month, and the month after. That's the one where, you know, you can call up and get a deferral because they will be open to that. So, you know, if you don't already know what your liability is, you know, find that out, submit the return, and then call them up to agree a payment plan to pay it over a period. And go for maximum. So before, they never used to do more than 12 months without, you know, some serious commercial reasons and cash flows and case studies and all the rest of it. But I think they'll be a lot more receptive now to longer periods given what we're going through.
So there is this one question which I'll ask all four of you, but if we keep them sort of short and sharp, we don't know how long this is going to last. So is it better to apply for the loan now, even if you don't need it? Or is it going to get harder 2-3 months down the line to get the same amount of loans? Now, I know everybody has a different view, so we'll take everybody's view. So let's start off with Jawad. What do you think? Should people take the loans or not?
I'm of the view that if the money is available at the low interest rates right now, apply for the loan, take it, take what you can at the moment. Will the government have a view later on in 6-9 months? Will they write off some of the debt? Will they? We don't know that. So if you can get your hands on some assistance, I would go for it.
Husnain?
I'd say, so similar to Jawad, yeah, take what you can get. But I'd say maybe do be careful about what kind of loans you take and how much it's going to cost you. None of this is free. And actually, the big banks are going to make a lot of money out of this. But the better your projections, the better the data you have, and that's where using an accountant like Reza is really handy. But having really good cash flow projections, knowing exactly where you're going to be. If you have enough to survive for 6 months, I think at this point, it's probably not the right time for you to take a loan. And I do think these loans will still be available in 2 months' time, in 6 weeks' time. So, you know, keep an eye on that, but definitely having solid cash flow projections should be your guide.
Reza, and then I'll go to Muntazir after that.
Yeah, I'd echo what Husnain said. And I'd first look at, rather than getting a loan, see what you can get from HMRC, because their interest rate is a lot less than the banks generally, and they're offering now no interest on certain things in terms of the time to pay arrangements. So do your cash flow projections, see where you are with your cash, when you can defer your VAT, or defer your PAYE and your corporation tax, and that might be sufficient to get you through for the next 12 months or so before you start to look at a CBIL loan.
Muntazir, last word from the banker.
Thank you, Shabar. I hear all of you. Whether my opinion is different, but like I said, that only borrow what you need rather than what you want. These loans will be there. Yes, they are cheap. They are guaranteed by the bank, but you still have to pay them back. So whether you take it now or you take it in 2 months' time, you will still have to pay it back. Whether it gets written off or not, we don't know. How long will Corona last? We don't know. But like Reza said, there are other things that you can explore. There is HMRC. Speak to your landlords about rent deferment or rent holiday. Look at the grants available. One thing that some people are also looking at is business insurances. Now, if you have got, if you don't have pandemic covenant on your insurances, that's fine. But if you have been closed down by the government, that is a business interruption. Speak to your business insurances so that, and that those things are grants. I mean, you paid for it, so you get your insurance money. There's no insurance, there's no paying back there. So look at all the options available and then make the decision. But I would still say that go and borrow what you need rather than what you want. I
think the view is that take a holistic view. Reduce your outgoings as much as you can, whether that's through capital repayment holidays, whether you can negotiate with your landlords, look at other ways of saving cash, and then if you need to borrow, then borrow, and there are potential insurances as well that you could get a payout from. So that is, I think, quite a bit done on loans. Husnain, this is specifically for you. What steps have you taken to keep your customers while you are shut?
It's a good question. Some of the things we did, which wasn't actually my idea. So a friend of mine called me and said that what they've managed to do is get a lot of people to make contact lens orders because they were worried that the shutdown would mean that they wouldn't be able to get their contact lenses in. So we've done a lot of that trade. We're still trading contact lenses by phone. But I think one of the most important things we did is really good communication. So we sent out mail shots to people saying, look, this is what we're here for. This is what we can do for you. And we've made sure that we can service people by phone even now. And so we've had a lot of people calling us who are customers of other opticians who aren't responding to them at all. So, Boots, Scrivens, all these other guys have closed down completely, but we're saying to them, let us try and see what we can do for you. Are there things we can do remotely for you? And even if you can't, it means trying and making that effort to keep in touch with people and keep people happy means that they're likely to come back to you in the future. But I don't think I've taken full advantage of this yet. In my head, all this is just settling down now to the point that I can even think about the opportunities that it presents, both in terms of what we can do now to get some income during this quiet period, and how we can be preparing to ramp things up for when we reopen, which really is becoming my focus and actually presents a lot of really exciting opportunity.
Tell us a bit more. How can you engage?
So you mean in terms of what we're planning to do for the
Yes.
recovery?
What you want to share, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. So we have, at the beginning of the year, we sat down like a lot of companies do and thought about where we want to get to by the end of this year, where we want to get to by the end of Q1.
You mean like the board behind you?
Yeah, so these are my projects for 2020. But actually, having nobody ever gets an opportunity, and especially people who are working in the business a lot, owner-operators, nobody really ever gets an opportunity to hit the pause button, have no customers for a while, have no staff calling all the time, and really focus on where you want to be and what you want to do. So we're using this opportunity. We've started thinking about actually, when we reopen, we have an opportunity now to put things in place, to put the right systems, processes, plans in place so that when we reopen, we hit the ground running and dig ourselves out of the hole, which inevitably we're going to be in because we've taken no income for a number of months. So that's what we're doing now. And we're trying to think really bold and ambitiously about what we can achieve in this time. And so in many ways, that cleanup of existing processes and the opportunity to really think outside the box without having to firefight every day is producing some good results already.
Alhamdulillah, that's interesting. Looks like everything seems to be going back to furlough. So Riza, are they allowed to take on a temp job while they're working, while they're on furlough with another company?
I don't believe they are, from what I've heard. But again, I'm not an employment lawyer, because technically they are still employed, so they cannot do any work during this period. I believe they can volunteer, but they can't do any other paid work because they are still deemed to be an employee of their employer.
I suppose NHS are looking for more volunteers, so that's a perfect opportunity to go do that. For staff who've had pre-booked holidays before the situation in our furlough, does this affect the allowance? I assume it looks, if they've taken the holiday, it is part of their entitlement, right? They can't claw that back.
No, that's right. So whatever holiday you've accrued to now and will keep on accruing during furlough, it shouldn't have any effect.
If you've booked something while at furlough, does that get knocked out? Or does that get clawed back?
I guess if you haven't used them and you've gone on furlough, then yeah, potentially it should be entitled. You should still be entitled to those days then, I guess.
I'm assuming there'll be more clarity from HMRC on this in the next month.
Yeah, again, these become more employment law points. So maybe, off the back of this, if there's enough interest to get an employment lawyer to answer these furlough questions, that might be a good thing.
If Mohammad Riaz is on the attendees list, he's got his next one to set up for employment lawyers. That's the first one, Riza, is a bit interesting. I don't know if you've got any views on it. If a company's got a director and their wife, both of them are working, but the director is ill, so doesn't work, and the wife doesn't work either, do they get any furlough on this?
Well, again, the same principles apply. So if they are salaried, and that's the key thing as well. A lot of directors will pay a small salary and dividends. Dividends don't come into it. You can only get a grant for the 80% of salary that you pay. So if there is a genuine case where there are two directors of a business and one cannot work or is actually officially put on furlough and not doing any work, and you can justify that, then they are in the same position as any other employee.
I'll answer the last one. It says, do I have to pay them the rest of the 20%? No, you don't, because it's voluntary. They have to accept it, and you just have to pay them the 80%, and hopefully you'll be able to recoup that when the government systems are up and running. Riza, do HMRC have offered an extension for CT 600s?
So Companies House have offered a 3-month extension to extend the accounts filing deadline. So thanks to Mazahir Rajwani for pointing that out. You wanted to shout out? There you go. And so that's
I tell you, all these accountants are on today, Riza.
That's quite easy to do. We did one for a client yesterday and it came through almost immediately. The CT 600 filing, they haven't, that was 12 months anyway. So accounts are due 9 months after the year end. The CT 600 isn't due until 12 months after the year end. There is no extension for that. And there's no real reason to be. Once you've submitted your accounts, you submit your tax return, and that enables you to lodge what you owe in tax, and then you can then call up the revenue to try and arrange a time to pay arrangement on whatever corp tax is due.
Whilst you're at it, while you're on a roll, this thing about minimum wage going up, the current basic pay and the new minimum wage applies to employees. Will the 80% be paid on the current pay or the new minimum wage pay? I would have assumed new, right, Riza?
Again, it's based on whatever pay is processed for that employee. So if they're due a pay rise, whatever amount they are being paid in that particular month, so long as it doesn't exceed the £2,500 limit, you should be able to claim 80% of whatever pay you have given that employee has.
Riza, if you look at the last question, I'll go to the preset questions so that Jawad and Hasnain, there's a question, and Brexit always comes in. How will Brexit impact small businesses with the coronavirus? And there's another question about how do you retain and remain in touch with your customers when you're sort of shut down or completely low in what you need to do. So Jawad, your thoughts on this?
So I mean, Brexit seems a very, very, very long time ago, and I don't know how relevant it is at the moment. But I mean, I'm not quite sure what the question is referring to in terms of Brexit. But is it referring to in terms of what's going to happen
small businesses
in a no-deal scenario? Is it? I mean, Brexit. It's already happened now, Brexit. But is it going to happen? Is the impact of a no-deal scenario, or is the question, will coronavirus push back this intermediate period, the transition period? I mean, I think the short answer is we don't really know what the impact is because we don't know how long COVID will go on for. It's a difficult one to contextualize at the moment, unfortunately.
This is an interesting one for you, Jawad. Is this time to invest in businesses and in the stock market, considering it's a falling market?
I had a conversation about this with our own accountant and some friends who actually are active in this. Right now, the advice is just sit tight. Cash is king at the moment. I know other people will be of a different mindset, but as an accountant, I'm always sort of quite prudent and quite skeptical. So my view on this right now as we speak is things are moving way too fast. Unless you're a professional, unless you do this for a living, you can make a lot of money as well, but you can lose a lot of money quite quickly as well. Just one of the things that I just wanted to touch on earlier was how can you come out of this period and take advantage of it once COVID finishes? I think the key there is, and I think Hasnain touched on it, is you've got to maintain communication, not just with your customers, but really with your staff. If the staff are the people who drive your business, if you treat them well right now, you will see the benefits in time. And take the time right now. It doesn't all have to be financial, but take the time right now to reach out to them and to really be there for them in this very anxious period. Because once things improve, they will be the ones who will be helping you drive your business forward. The people are key in everyone's business.
No, and I completely agree with you on that one, Joe. Because, for example, one of the things we've done is I have been speaking to the managers of the practice, and we have been helping our staff, because we're in the care business, we're part of the key workers, we still need to continue doing what we need to do, but we are supporting them with a lot of these individual measures. So those with mortgages, we are just giving them bits of information, saying, look, who are you? Who's your mortgage with? Let me go check. What are the regulations? Here, this is the number you need to call. This is what you need to tell them. And just giving them that support as they're going through this. I think that is a key message we can give.
No, I completely agree with that. I completely agree with that, 100%.
There is questions about self-employed and locums, but I think the Chancellor should be on his feet soon, or probably is on his feet.
I just had a breaking news alert from BBC. Self-employed to be paid 80% of profits up to 2,500 a month. So that's promising. Wow. I'm sure we'll hear the detail in due course.
So please don't ask questions to Riza. The Chancellor is on his feet. So it looks like there is something coming for the self-employed. It's just about how we're going to calculate that monthly, right? So at least there is some more good news there for the self-employed, the locum businesses. There is a very specific question, Riza, about employment. Do you want to take that, or will they need to go talk to a lawyer about a new member of staff?
So a new member of staff has handed her notice in and is due to start in May with us. We can't take her on. She hasn't signed a contract with us. Yeah, I mean, that's probably, I think from what I've heard, if they're an employee, potentially you can put them on immediate furlough. So as and when they do formally become an employee, as long as that's within the contract, or, you put them on notice on furlough. But again, check with an employment lawyer if unsure.
Hasnain, charging patients to post contact lenses or paying for post yourself as contact lenses not offered free delivery.
That's a really specific question. That's
a very specific question to you.
A small group of people, but it is. We're not charging, but mainly because I think it's a really good way of winning some loyalty from your customers to say, look, don't come in, we're going to send them to you. It's won us a lot of points. But it's also because we have recently reviewed all our pricing, and we know that we have broad enough shoulders in terms of our margins to be able to manage that. So be careful of your margins if you're going to make offers like that.
There is another question saying, is there compensation to me for loss of earnings from the government? No. I think the government have done a huge amount of stimulus package, and I don't think you get any more than what is already coming. And with today's news, hopefully there'll be some better news. And there is talks about what other options do we have. I'm just looking at some of the questions we have. I think we've dealt with most of the questions. I think if we have 1 minute of final comments from each of the panelists, I will try to do a sum up, and then we can all go listen to what the Chancellor has to say. So should we start with our banker this time?
I just want to say thank you very much to all of you to give me this chance to come here. But my advice to everyone is look after yourselves, stay safe, because you've got to come out on the other side to be able to run your business and everything. So your health comes first. When it comes to finances and everything, there are plenty of choices. The government is out to help you. The banks are helping. We can help each other as well. So let's do that for a change.
Thank you, Mutazir. Jawad, and then I'll go to Hussein and then to Riza.
I mean, I just wanted to repeat what I said earlier. Just look after your people and look after your staff. They are really key to your future as well as their own future. And we're all in this together. If you are providing any service, even a skeleton service at the moment, I mean, a very good example is what Hussein just said about the contact lenses. Providing any service under pressure right now is key because people will remember that. People will remember that you have gone out of your way to service them, but don't put yourself at risk, obviously. And people will ensure that they will remember you. And inshallah, in the future, you can only grow from that.
Thank you, Jawad. Hussein and then Riza.
So I'd say two quick things. One is I've definitely gone from a journey of being extremely panicked and feeling like, how am I going to survive the next few months, to now actually being able to see what kind of opportunities might come from this. And this is really, really key. I'd say if there's one thing you can be doing, if you have run your business on, with cash flow issues for the last few years, or with systemic cultural issues where the staff aren't getting along, this really is an opportunity to address those issues. So take some time, and it might not be now, it might be next week or the beginning of next month, but take some time to take stock and really think about which areas of your business could do with focus in this time where you're not serving customers, and work on them. Because nobody gets a pause in business life. So to have this, you can see it as an opportunity. And the second thing I would say is, as business leaders, we all have a moral obligation as well, and we can't forget that. And that obligation is to our staff, to our families, and to society and our community at large as well. And it's really, really important that when the decisions we're making, we're balancing the public health aspect and the business aspect as well. And if it means sacrificing some profit or some income to make sure that your staff are putting food on the table, or to make sure that you're not part of the problem when it comes to public health, we should be taking that very, very seriously, because that's part of our responsibility as well.
Thank you, Hussein. Riza?
Thanks, Shaba. Yeah, what I would say is, firstly, take stock of your finances, adopt a very cautious view of the future, because none of us know where this is going to end up. Reach out to your accountant to help you with putting together those cash flow projections, so you know where you're at, you know when you need to rein things in. And then echoing the point which Hussein said about looking after your team, looking after your staff. And actually I think what will come out of this is that with everyone working from home, certainly kind of the office-based businesses, employers will find that a newfound trust with their employees, because they're no longer in the office. They don't need to see them working to be actually working. And I think we'll come out a lot more productive as a result of this, as employers feel that actually your staff can be trusted to get on and do the work without you having to micromanage them all the time. And I think off the back of that, we will come out of this a lot more productive as a nation once all this is over.
Thank you very much, Riza. From my part, I just want to thank the panelists and everybody else for the first ever webinar arranged by CoEJ in relation to the crisis we are in. We had some technical glitches, so I apologize for that. Hopefully we will have set up our systems better next time. But more importantly, let us look after each other. I think this is an opportunity for the community to get together, and let us use each other as support. And we are all in this together. I am confident that inshallah we will come out on the other side better, stronger, and together inshallah. So from all of us and all the panelists, thank you very much, and wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you.
Thank you.